evening. Welcome to the stream. Just checking out my audio levels. Then I'll get rid of the headphones. I think they're all right. Thumbs up. Alright, take those off. Just so happened that I had a chance to stream tonight. It's one of those things, if you're watching this anytime lately, the first presidential debate that I have no interest in watching for reasons I will keep to myself. But my wife wants to see it, so she's out there watching it. So it gave me a time and a space to myself, not to mention, since she's watching broadcast TV, I have plenty of bandwidth to myself. So I thought, what better thing to do than to try to quickly set up a stream and stream. So here I am. The subject of tonight's stream is a read-along of a book that I had never heard of before. I believe it was published in 1990 by Better Games. It's called Designing Fantasy Scenarios, and it was super disgustingly, amazingly, generously donated to me by a friend and often commenter on the channel and patron Frederick, so thank you for that so much. I really appreciate it. It was an amazing gesture. He sent it to me, so I thought I would give it a look. So let's, as they say, let's get on to it. I'm just going to pull up the... I don't usually have too much going on in the chat, but I will pull it up just in case something's happening. Okay, all good with that. So here we go. Designed by Rom and Hilmer, art by Todd Pickens. Alright, so this is by Better Games. Has a subtitle, Barony Complete Mission Generation System. So just, I know nothing about this. I literally just have seen that cover. Usually with these read-alongs I try to go in kind of blind unless it's a retro. And this is retro, but it's a retro one that I am not familiar with. So I did not pre-read it or pre-do anything. So I will be as surprised and amazed and shocked, whatever emotion comes up, as you when we get into seeing what's what. And this is from 1990. This is basically pre-internet. So here we have a warning about, hey, if you're gonna copy these pages, Xeroxing was a thing. I think I saw Matt Colville on Twitter made a comment about how he kind of missed sort of Kinko's kind of vibe of going in to copy stuff. And yeah, there was certainly kind of something to it where you might go to the library with a bunch of change or bills to go in and make copies of things. But that is in the past now. I mean, I don't even know, do a lot of people really even print out ebooks and whatnot, or is people just really mostly playing online? I mean, for reading purposes, I generally just read them on my iPad or even on my phone if I'm desperate and I don't have anything, a larger screen to read it on. I think I've only really printed out a few things in the last couple of years, but it was a thing. So here we have some important background. What do you mean you're not ready to play? Haha. In order for a referee, capital R, to be ready, all he needs is a scenario. But what if the players don't want to do that scenario? That's a good question. Well, I guess he needs a lot of scenarios. Before I hear the weeping and gnashing of teeth, don't lose hope. The guideline in this pamphlet will give referee, I don't know why they're not putting the in front of the referee or a in front of the referee, but that's just their style, I suppose. The guidelines will give referee the advantage. He will always be ready. Always be ready. I think Alec Baldwin might have said that in Glengarry Glen Ross. The Glengarry scenarios. These scenarios are gold, but you can't have them. They're for closers. That's my cat Betty. You probably couldn't even hear that. I probably could have gotten away without her. Oh, but she's also behind me. Hi, Betty. Let's see, where was I? Okay, these ideas and the tables in the rear of this pamphlet contain universal concepts that can be used to augment any role-playing system, or they are specially designed to work with a Barony, capital B, campaign. I am not familiar with Barony campaign, so I'm assuming that's a thing. Frederick sent me actually a few different books, and I picked this one kind of at random. It was the first one that I happened to pop. They're all in drive-thru. I put the link to drive-thru in the show notes if you see those. However, someone who it seemed like seemed to be affiliated with this said that this was the first one to read. So I decided to just go with that. So I don't know what a barony campaign is, if it's something other than, if it's a system, because I don't see any other systems that this is affiliated with. Scenarios are the adventures. Each will be much easier to create than the entire campaign because the details are on a personal level. A scenario traces the characters through a story. For instance, a scenario might place a group of players in a town to start a riot, a sage library to rob magic scrolls, a wharf to pirate a vessel, or other such adventures involving secret messages, coinage for transport, or forts and troops of men, besides the basic and overused descent into the underworld. Alright, so there you go. So that gives us an idea of what kind of things we're going to see. Except in cases where referee has created his own detailed outline of events, players follow this generic flow. So we're going to have a stepped scenario sequence. Step 1, mission and players' agreement of terms. Step 2, encounters, travel, and action en route to climax. Climax, or the ultimate battle. An epilogue with the travel home at mission's end. And then the aftermath and the campaign evolution. So we're seeing there a pretty standard. If this was a stream on screenplays or stories, it's a very similar narrative arc here. Note, digressions also occur in any step, though mostly travel, to generate the fate of a character separated from the group after a mishap. Okay, that's interesting. The most important aspect of the scenario is the mission. The culmination of each mission arrives in the climax. In detailing the scenario, the mission must be considered. Referee might need to diagram a castle, or several important residents of a hamlet may need generating. Guidelines for generating and moderating the players through a scenario's climax depend highly on the game system employed by the referee, but the mission or basic task is universal. Simply story plot ideas. Right. Makes sense. Battles happen during travel along the scenario. Okay. I'm just going to skip some of this. I know enough about story, y'all. I don't need none of this. In general, the whole group of players travels and adventures together. Okay, that's good, right? Play should emphasize interaction between the players as they resolve referee situations, acting the roles of their characters in discourse with themselves and characters operated by the referee, called non-player characters or NPCs. Right, so we know what we're doing here, right? We're going to be playing a game. Before describing anything further, understand the following 4 terms, when capitalized, acquire special meaning. So the first one they've got here is patron. That's an NPC that contracts the mission, the person who requests the players to perform some deed or task. In rare cases, the patron will be a player, a self-employed job, but even these missions usually have some supreme backer, like the player character's king or guild. Then we have a rival. That's an NPC that most directly opposes the completion of the mission. Principal character that must be bested in order to succeed. The person that represents conflicting interests to the mission's objectives. When the intended victim of violence, often the intended victim of violence or other intrigue. There's some more notes, but I'll skip that. I mean, we can imagine what the rival is, right? They're the antagonist. Who is stopping us from doing this thing we want to do? Friend is an NPC that has become loyal companion or indebted comrade of the player. Also NPCs that will serve out of fear or financial obligation. An agent whose help might be requested to bolster the player's strength or knowledge. Alright. Down to an enemy. Oh, so the rival, okay, so the rival actually isn't the enemy. The rival is, I guess, a different... So let's see, the enemy is the NPC that has become an adversary of the player because of past transgressions or defeat. Okay, so it looks like they're making a little bit of a distinction here. The rival is someone who is antagonistic to the players in whatever scenario we're doing, whereas the enemy is someone from past scenarios, presumably, or something else, is an overall antagonist. But it's not. They are not an antagonist specifically because of what's happening here. They, I guess, to use an example, right? If we were playing Lord of the Rings, Sauron is maybe the enemy, but on a given, I don't know, Denethor at some point is the enemy because he's controlled by Wormtongue, right? But he's only the enemy for that scenario where it is, get free him or whatever it is, right? I think we can imagine. That's probably a terrible example, but I think we can imagine what we're talking about here. Enemy, rivals from the past who are still hanging around to try to thwart you, and then a rival is an antagonist of the present. Every player should list his friends and enemies for future reference. That's a good idea. Each mission will be prompted by a patron. That's the person who's requesting the task. Players will undertake tasks or command forces of men fighting for the patron's objectives against his rival. Sometimes the patron will accompany the players, usually for low level or ability characters, but most often the patron will stay safe at home. All right. Some interesting punctuation or lack thereof here. Most mission offers are usually made to one player only. Okay. If the players form a group that becomes famous, the patron will still approach the appointed leader, wisest looking, of the group to state his offer. All right. I mean, that sounds maybe a little bit dated, right? I don't think you have to approach one person. You could go to the A team and they all come. You call the number or whatever. You go to meet them wherever they put on their ad, and they all are there. Yeah, Hannibal's the leader, but you could include everybody. But sure, it's not really doesn't really impact anything. It's one of those things like I wonder why they put that there, because we don't need to know that. I think we can figure it out. And there are other reasons you might approach a certain person besides their theoretical wisdom. It might simply be that they seem gullible if it's being tricky, or they're handsome, or you have a relationship with them. So I feel like that's a little bit... I feel like that advice is kind of a touch outmoded, and it's maybe a little bit unnecessarily narrow. All right, so we got some things about record keeping, which I'm just going to skip for right now. I want to get to the meat of it because I don't know how much time I have. This, guys, can be the limit. The following guidelines are offered to keep the financial exchange within Barony's game perspective. Barony underlined. No more than 1,000 coins of currency will ever be given as pay to the player. Limit the patron's supplied men to perhaps a dozen, unless mission specific. Limit patrons' supplied magical devices to one, unless the mission involves Dark One, capital D, capital O, Supreme Principle of Evil. Okay. And then, you don't get paid much in advance. That's fine. Failure usually means no payment or worse. That's fine. If the player refuses, do not generate a new one to offer. If the player refuses, do not turn around and offer the mission to another player. Each must find their own mission offerings during campaign evolution between missions. In some cases, the player may renegotiate the exact details of the mission and change partially the objectives. All right, so I guess the thing is, I guess that's the one distinction, right? So you're supposed to come to one player because that player has found this mission, and other players will find their own missions. So it really doesn't have to be the wisest. I guess it could be any of them, and presumably at the end of this, there's kind of a downtime like action where you might go try to scrounge up and get missions for yourself. As stated, the patron will usually approach only one player. Refusing a petition for aid is quite common and usually results in no further action. However, depending upon the mission, the patron might not want the player to spread word of his intended deed. If the mission was secretive or blatantly illegal, by declining the mission, the player may need to roll on the digression table to determine any further outcome. In other words, if you refuse, they might try to shank you. What about the other players? Well, that's what friends are for. The players offered the job must pay the other players their demands. Interesting. So you're kind of making one player the foreman, so to speak, or in a sense, a middleman, an agent. So they're going to come to him, and then he'll presumably say, "Okay, I'm getting 1,000 gold pieces. Now I have to divvy that out to the players." Well, I guess it definitely adds an interesting intrigue element, right? I mean, you're 1,000, and you have other players. Do you lowball them? Do you pay them split it fair? Are these negotiations happening at the open table where everyone can hear it? Some interesting politicking. Might not work for everybody, but that's okay. Start the travel with only those characters as appropriate. Confiscate any others as NPCs for possible use aiding the rival. Alright. Alright, I want to get down to the meat here. Let's see, they do mention a special case. The very first scenario of a new, often level 0 character may not be refused. Either patron's offer or request for aid from another player. Also, this applies when referee and new players, all at level 0, assemble for the first time. The mission is automatically accepted and started. Play starts with step 2. Alright, so you get kind of a little in media res sort of thing. We're going to, if you're just starting out, you're just going to start in the flow and go. By ensuring gameplay for new characters in a scenario, the players are forced to develop a history that will expand during travel and the aftermath. Okay. That's basically saying you just get the gears moving. That's good. All right, here we go. This is what I want. Fantasy Mission Generator. The following series of 2 tarot card descriptions will greatly aid referee in generating a mission. Alright, so they're using some kind of tarot style. The descriptions below integrate well into the scenario sequence and give modifiers in this basic pattern. Do I need to... Okay. Simply flip a card to determine each of the following categories of details in the overall mission. Alright, so I don't have any tarot cards to really... I think I do have a set of tarot cards somewhere. Certainly not handy. So hopefully this won't make describing this stuff seem too all over the place. Alright, so it looks like we have multiple parts. Part 1, the patron or benefactor with quirks and depth. Part 2, missions or tasks with twists and augments. Part 3, patron's motivations for seeking player with changes and attitudes. Part 4, patron's finances, resources, or clout with problems and difficulties. Part 5, other opposition, difficult situations, or unforeseen opponents with unguessables and modifiers. Principal rival with rivals, broaden and flesh out. I think that probably means flesh out instead of, for some reason I read that, I thought of flesh coming out, but I'm sure they mean fleshing out, like to add detail. Optional Part 2, missions specific to entering underworlds in all their forms. Optional Part 3, personal quests and secondary motives of party members. Optional Part 5, opposition specific to underworlds. Alright, so there's a lot to digest here, but it seems like there's kind of a yin-yang with each thing, which I like. So you're going to get, quirks and depth, twists and augments, changes in attitudes, problems and difficulties. I mean, I guess some of these are kind of the same, but the idea is you kind of resources and then problems, right? You have a motivation, but then you have these different attitudes. You have a task, then there's a twist. You have a benefactor, but then there's a quirk. So that looks good. Additional answers to questions. Who, where, what, why, when, and how. All right. The major tarot do not by themselves generate the result. Instead, these cards, when selected, modify the result of the final card pick in the category. Whew, excuse me, a little hiccup there. Alright, so they're going to add some kind of twist. So part 1, we have the major tarot. That's the patron's quirks or added depth. The magician is, I guess, guileful, silver tongue, wheeler dealer. The high priestess Patron has a reputation for using sorcery. Patron is a controller of the forces of science and nature or the principles of magic. The Empress. The Patron has a strong presence, persuader with voice. Okay. Let's see. The Emperor. Patron is a skilled soldier, sapper, siege craftsman, or commander. The Hierophant. The patron is deeply spiritual. The Lovers. 2 patrons are involved, but only one approaches the players. Charlotte. Chariot. Patron is eager. Inverted. They're aloof. Also, there's inversions too. That's cool. Justice. Patron up to this time has been outwardly a loyal citizen of his baron. It's inverted. They're a criminal of renown. Hermit. Patron's much older than he appears. I didn't do the inverted some of the earlier ones, but that's okay. But you can see here, these are all twists and quirks. Got the Wheel of Fortune. You reshuffle, and does that mean he has no quirks? It says reshuffle the deck and continue. Does that mean Wheel of Fortune's no quirks? Does that mean you do another one? Maybe it means no quirks. It says continue as opposed to do it again. Let's see if we have. So we got some other ones. Force, Hangman, Death, Temperance, Devil. What's the Devil inverted? So obviously Devil's patron is evil, without pity, but they're inverted. That means that well, I guess it's if it's inverted, there's additionally further. So if it's inverted, the Devil's inverted, the patron is still evil, and they will do anything to satisfy the mission goal. Anything. All right. Oh, there's more. The Tower of Destruction, the Star, the Moon, the Sun, the Judgment, the World, and of course the Fool. Fool here, the patron's indecisive, or a flake. They would rather have the mysterious forces of fate decide most actions. Oops. What did I do? Oh yeah, I did. Oh, no, wrong way. All right. So I don't know. I guess for this system to work, we're supposed to be, I guess, split the major and minor, whatchamacallit? What was it? The major arcana and the minor arcana? Because we went through the majors, and now we're going to actually go through, and I'm assuming that we're not going to get those anymore. We're just going to get the other one. So, King of Cups, he's a guild master. Queen of Cups, an enchantress or witch. I'm not going to do the inverted. We can kind of guess. Well, inverted queen is kind of a whorehouse, madam, or a pimp. Knight of Cups, a mounted messenger. Knave of Cups is a merchant prince. I mean, you kind of get the idea here. I mean, the tarot is very flavorful. I don't know. I guess if we know this when we're doing this, we got to make sure that we have a tarot set to do all these things with, right? I mean, there's probably online tarot. Maybe just from, I don't know, just from a certain perspective, I kind of like, oh, I would have loved to just had it in it using dice or something else, but you really can't argue with the flavorfulness of the tarot. And sometimes it's nice to get in there and have, things have a, feel a touch. I mean, obviously dice have that too, but the tarot, the imagery, it's got a, it's got a lot to it. It's got kind of a lot of metaphysical heft that you can bring to bear. Okay, 10 of Cups, they're the head of a household. 9 of Cups, debt collector. And again, I'm not going to do all the, I'm just going to kind of run through these so we get ideas. I'm not going to do all the inverted ones, but we know that we're getting kind of twice as many as there are, because each one has an inversion, and those inverted ones, I'm guessing, are just kind of opposites of what they have. So again, the 9 of Cups is a debt collector or enforcer, and inverted, they're a tax or tithe collector, right? So one way they're an unlawful collector of monies, and the other way they're a lawful collector of monies. We got Pilgrim on a Trek, Eight of Cups, we have former patron or employer. This is another one where I guess, regardless of tarot, would nice just have a list. Because the ways these are all just, I would love to just kind of give it a quicker read through. Again, just for purposes of this, just to make it simpler. But I'll go with what I got. We got a suspicious figure, a warden, a woman. That's maybe a little bit outmoded. Let's see. What is it if it's inverted? Yeah, what's woman inverted? Does it say here? Oh, here we go. Oops. It's a lover of the player if it's inverted. But again, this one, you know, outmoded, right? I think we're past the spot where we're thinking that there's only a single kind of woman character and everyone else are all men, so could probably come up with some replacement for that. Unless you're playing, I mean, I don't know, I would say even if you're playing, I was going to say, unless you're playing some kind of strict historical thing, but even then, I would say, ditch it for something else. Okay. Two of Cups, pair of men or partners. King of Rods, a landed noble. Queen of Rods, a noble woman. Knight of Rods, a marshal or general. A foppish warrior. We have a peasant. What is that? A young lad or a child. Interesting. One of them, it's not a person at all. It's a letter, a note, or a message. And we have a constable or sheriff, an officer, brigand, a steward. Okay, so again, rather than read through all of these, suffice it to say, we've got a lot. There is a lot to choose for. As I said that, and now I'm going through, I don't know, I'm like on 5, 6, 7. Oh, wait a minute, I skipped something. All right, so it's probably like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages. Oh, wait, I missed something else? I did. Okay, so still, there's quite a few more. Wait a minute. Hold on, I think I went too far. So here we stop. Okay, so I went too far. Still, there's a lot of, we have a lot of choices with the patrons. Now we'll get to the twists and augments. So this is for the mission. The magician says at least one player must pretend to be something he's not in order for the mission to succeed. So maybe we're talking a Mission Impossible type thing, what do you call it, the Man in the Iron Mask or something, anything where you have to do some kind of swap or infiltration. High Priestess says mission can only be completed by a female or with the help of one. That's an interesting one. And that one does have, so that one's equal opportunity because in inverted it's a male. Oh, never mind. Inverted it's a male and female attire. I would just say inverted they need the help of a man. Again, I think some of these ideas of who all your players are, or A, or who all your characters are. B is maybe a little outmoded, but we'll just keep on going. Let's see, Empress. We'll see, they'll need to make some kind of deal with nobles. Emperor, the mission is a diversion for something even greater. The Hierophant mission involves a servant of a god. Servant of a god. Let's see, lovers, if an object is involved or related to the quest. Many duplicates exist to confuse the players. Alright, so choose the Cup of Christ, Indy. The Chariot, or as I like to call it, the Charlotte. Success will leave the players famous, and if it's inverted, success will leave them infamous. So definitely with these, it seems like whatever we have, we're going to have to take all this stuff and kind of figure it out, right? Because if we're just putting it out there, we'll have to figure out that twist. If it's going to make them infamous, we'll have to figure out why exactly that is. But we're getting this at the beginning, so we'll have to, this is something we'd have to make sense at the end of it all. Justice, the mission must have at least one court case. That's cool. All right, again, I'm not going to go through all these, but we have a lot of twists and augments. So a lot of ways to take this, whatever we're generating, and add that some extra to kind of, if not totally flip it on its head, then give it a different twist. All right, so let's go through some of these. So those were the twists. Now let's see the actual, take a look at some of the jobs. And again, I'm not going to go through all these. I don't have as much time as I might usually do. But I do want to get at least a flavor, kind of a taste, if you will, of what these missions are. All right, so organize a riot, strike or distraction, deliver legal writs or important documents, organize a bandit gang, or, if it's inverted, maybe you're training a rebellion, organize a group of vigilantes. Let's see, spy, another kind of spy, but it's one's for blackmail and the other one's for political secrets. Go on a voyage, serve on a ship. Wow, that's a tough one. Perform treasonable acts against their own leader. Another spy, but observe and obtain mercantile information. A little industrial espionage, never hurt anybody. Organize a militia force and lead them into battle. That's one that's kind of maybe underutilized in a D&D type campaign, but so few people use any kind of, or there's not really or a universal kind of large-scale battle system for D&D at the moment, so maybe that's why it's kind of an underutilized thing, but that's cool. Let's see, you have to perform a specific skill. You could have to locate a missing person. You might have to kidnap somebody. You might have to perform some kind of crazy or insulting task. You might need to lead a raid, join a unit of soldiers, rescue somebody. Okay, so we're getting the whole gamut of different mission types. And remember, we're going to add that mission type is then twisted by what we got earlier. So, for example, we got the Knave of Rods, which gives us a rescue somebody kidnapped or imprisoned, but it's got that judgment twist that if we do that, it will cause a secondary event which has to be corrected for the first one to succeed. So again, right, we're going to have to figure out, well, what does that mean? Okay, if we rescue this person, or maybe even if we try to rescue them, then that will maybe cause something else. In other words, kind of one of those things like, hey, the kidnappers say, don't send anybody, or otherwise we're going to do this, and then clearly they've sent somebody, so then you have to prevent the other thing from happening, and we would have to interpret all of these things, but it's a lot of fodder for that kind of thought, which is good. So let's just move ahead here. Let's get our eyeballs on optional part 2. Dangerous circumstances during underworld missions. Now we're talking. The magician says, a rival needs the players to enter the underworld, for by doing so, they bring him his means of escape. Okay, so the rival is somebody who is antagonistic to whatever mission they're on. And by underworld here, they're talking dungeon, whatnot, right? Underworld. So that's interesting. There's a little bit more here that I will read. Players may be aware or forewarned of this fact. If it's inverted, the patron is actually a servant or magical manifestation of the rival's powers, aka, we've been duped. That's an interesting one. Let's read the Empress. Underworld connects to another more dangerous or notorious crypt or acts as a portal into another dimension. Players may not have been told, but their quest must take the party to this place. If it's inverted, the mission will start in the underworld, but eventually will continue above ground into the plots of the campaign's barons. So there you have it. So that one is kind of either you have to go into the underworld and potentially into other dimensions or other even more dangerous places, or you're going to start down there and then have to emerge into the surface world. And these are all optional extra circumstances. Then we have another optional part. Missions specific to the entering and exploring of underworlds in all their forms. All right, I'll just read a couple of these just to get an idea of what we're talking about here. Clear out the uninvited denizens of an underworld so it can be returned to its rightful owners. parentheses, dwarves. If it's inverted, the underworld contains valuable mines that now are not accessible because of monsters. We took pickaxe to the Great Seal and pried it open. I guess that was a mistake. Yep, that was a mistake. I'll read one more. Let's just go down a bit. Support one side in an internal feud between factions that divide the underworld. Usually means two dwarf force. Wait, hold on. Usually means two dwarf clans, or dwarves versus goblins. Inverted, lead an attack by a force of outcasts or refugees, often dwarves, returning to retake their rightful home. Players are usually expected to take care of the large problems. It's only one dragon. Alright. So then we get some kind of extra juice that might happen when we have to go into the underworld. Remember, underworld dungeons. But of course, you could extend that to other things if you're doing an Underdark or a Hollow Earth, whatever. Under Mountain, whatever your version of the depths of the earth is. Right? It could be, you know, if you saw my earlier read through of Downcrawl, could be kind of a Downcrawl area, or you know, Veins of the Earth, whatever. So that's some missions specific we're gonna get, or we can get. I'm just gonna skip some of these. Let's go on to, here we go, part 3, back to the Major Tarot with reasons, changes, and attitude. Changes of reasons. Okay. Yeah, that's just a hard one to probably. Excuse me. I think they're saying, is there going to be a twist in the attitude or reasons for some of this stuff? All right, I guess I just got to read one and let's see what they say. I'll start with, let's go with the justice. No matter how evil the motives or mission, the patron has legal authority for any actions. If it's inverted, the reverse is true. No matter how pure or simple the motive and actions are illegal. Okay. Let's get another one here to clarify this. Maybe. Force says the patron has been extorted into taking the mission. The motive is his tormentors. It's inverted. The patron was duped into the mission. His motive is meaningless and not the true nature of the deed. Pick an extra card Y to represent the true motive of the mission. Okay. So I guess in some ways this is the twist. This is basically the twist of motivation, why they are doing this, right? So that's cool. So you can kind of get a little extra thinking into it. What I like about this stuff, it doesn't necessarily, on a surface level, you might never encounter it, right? But it as the GM, it might give me extra things that I can work with behind the screen if I'm trying to decide how an NPC should act or what they might do. When I'm looking at, okay, the player's doing this, well, what's happening kind of off screen? All this stuff gives me just more material, more fodder, so to speak. Let's get to part 3. The patron's reason, motivations, or cause for seeking player. Let's see. It's a pure, and the King of Cups says it's a pure and just motive. If it's inverted, it's monumental or decisively patriotic. Gain knowledge of future war or turmoil. Okay. Capitalize on world political situation that is about to take place. If it's inverted, prevent such a war or catastrophe. Ruthless and will do any atrocity to attain a goal. I don't know if, is that a reason? Whoops. It's kind of interesting they put the reason changes after or before the reason. But there you go. We have various, oops, I went the wrong way. Still wrong. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it's interesting, the ordering of it. Let's read a couple more. Heard of the player's past adventures and reputations. inverted, heard of the player's past adventures and reputation in a negative way, thinks the players are too stupid to betray the plan, or easy to silence later if needed. Well, that's cold, but potentially true. They're just desperate and need aid, or they appear to be desperate, but they might not be. Okay, so that's cool. So we're getting more on the motivations. Well, let's see. Optional part 3, additional challenges in personal quests. I'm just going to read a couple here. Find a cure for a close friend who is catatonic and dying. Player also seeks power and riches to build a barony. Player also wants to bring acclaim to his town, a religion, baron, whatever. Player also wants to attract followers. So this is interesting. These are all kind of player motivations, but I'm curious as to, this is where I would usually let the players just themselves come up with these. So it's interesting that you might roll for them, but it is optional. And then we have another optional part, which is personal quests, alternate motives, and secondary objectives of party members. Okay. Let's see. So we might find an item, weapon, or device that is your birthright to obtain. Carry a gift to a foreign leader or a distant relative. Desire to learn how to command men, negotiate a deal or a marriage proposal. Alright, so then we got some more of those. A good. Alright, so far we've got our patrons' motivations, some twists to those. We've got, it's given us a lot of kind of some building blocks of scenarios and then various twists to them. So now we're up to part 4, and this is going to be finances, problems, and difficulties. So this meaning like you might have trouble getting paid. Finances will seem adequate, but in play will never be enough. If it's inverted, finances will seem meager, but will always be enough. That's an interesting one. I'm not sure how you play those out. I mean, obviously it's easy to play out. You just don't seem to have enough cash on hand. But I'm not sure how you play out the other one. I guess you'd really have to be kind of on your toes to doing a dance of like, oh yeah, it's going to seem like you don't have enough money, but really you do. Let's see. High Priestess, someone else lends finances to the patron's mission. Inverted, someone lends finances to the patron's mission. However, the controller of these additional finances requires a petition or personal involvement to use their wealth. Okay. This makes me want to understand a little bit more of maybe the more mechanical things that are going on. Because if there was, like some systems do, where they take money and instead of counting gold pieces, you're doing a roll against maybe a resource, like a usage die type situation, something like that, then this makes a lot more sense in the way of how you can do it, where you can kind of lower the die or kind of raise the die or have people do that. I mean, obviously it's easy to play out like, hey, we've got this guy will give you some extra cash, but they want in. I mean, that's a classic trope, right? Some of the other ones might be a little bit harder to play, but I'm sure we could figure out a way. I'm just going to read a couple more. All the finances were secured as debt from a moneylender or guild. Inverted, all the finances were secured from thieves. By accepting any of the patron's finances, the opposition will know the player's plans. Spies exist. If it's inverted, by accepting any of the patron's finances, the opposition will know the player's plans. However, the patron knows this and will warn the player. Alright, so that one's basically being spied on. So this is almost, I guess, could be seen as like you're getting the cash. Right, it's getting the cash moment, and what kind of twists, what kind of terms come out of that. We have part 4, the patron's finances, resources, or clout. So it's the King of Cups there. They don't have any wealth or friends. They're actually hoping the players will get credit or share in the profits at the end. So this could be the guy who has the plans for a great heist but can't do it themselves. They come to you saying, hey, I don't have any cash to pay you, but clearly we're going to make thousands of gold pieces doing it, so we can all take a nice share at that point. Which actually is used quite a bit. The guy who's, selling the plan. Let's read a couple more. Controls or has access to a local armory. If it's inverted, the patron controls an armory, but it is ill-equipped or lacking variety. Here you go. Here's a bunch of knives. The knave outwardly without means secretly has great wealth. If it's inverted, the patron claims to have no wealth, but secretly has much, but the players see through it. So we get the idea here, right? Different amounts of wealth and influence that they could possibly have. Now we'll get into the opposition. They're unguessables and modifiers. Alright, let's just read a couple of these to get a sense for what they are. Mission is most confounding. Right as players give up, an opportunity will present itself. Give clues to mission only in epilogue. Inverted, the mission is very misleading. Clues that present themselves only prove to be incomplete or false. I'm not sure what to do with that one. Not sure how to unpack that one yet. What's the Emperor say? Mission is treason in one or all the players' homeland. Inverted, during the mission, all players with magical ability will temporarily lose their powers. That one will not go over well with many players. And oh boy, 5th edition players, yeah, you might need to rewrite that one. I can already hear the thousands of cries on Reddit, subreddits and subreddit posts about my GM made me lose all my powers. Look, I make fun, I joke, I kid, but yeah, that's, and this is kind of arbitrary, right? I mean, yes, as the GM, I could come up with a reason why you lose your powers, but still. That might be one to rethink. Though maybe it would be a nice twist, maybe not for a whole lot of the adventure, but maybe there's a nice twist in there somewhere. Let's see, I'll just read a couple more. During the scenario, capture by rival brings only one result, hanging. Ooh. Inverted, even after the scenario or another mission years later, players may be executed if captured and brought before this mission's rival or his surviving agents. Yikes. This one's kind of cool. The death card here says, untimely natural death will slay an important NPC during the mission. Should not be the patron or rival. If it's inverted, one of the player's favorite weapons will break during the climax of the scenario. So that's an interesting twist, right? Because I think a lot of people talk about off and on, weapons and should they break and things like that. But that one's kind of neat because it's something that it's going to only happen once in a very blue moon that this would happen, and it would be in the kind of climactic battle. Knowing that it's going to happen, you could probably find the right moment for it to break. But the other side of the death one's kind of cool too, because that usually doesn't happen. Usually everything's got a reason. In this case, it's natural. It's just very potentially, I guess, inconvenient. Or we assume. I guess it doesn't have to be, but we assume. Part 5. Other opposition, difficult situations, or unforeseen opponents. Again, just a couple of these to get the flavors. Final goal or situation not easy to define. Several places or battles must be entered prior to the climax. Use double the travel encounters. Whew. If it's inverted, the situation is a mystery. Clues point to climax. Let's see, let's do another one here. Must traverse many unexplored or rugged, arduous miles of both land and water before entering the climax. Inverted, accidentally cross an area where a wizard conducts powerful conjuration that changes physical laws over nature. Why don't my arrows fly straight? Well, that's an interesting one. That'll be a tough one maybe to run, but definitely could be really fun. I would think, unless you're playing a really long campaign, that kind of thing I'd only want to happen once, unless it's going to be one of the points of the campaign, because that's changing the laws of nature and physics in an area can be kind of tough to do. Let's see. Large estate owner with many servants and slaves becomes involved, opposed to the mission. If it's inverted, players must cross an area of impending revolt. Many runaway slaves or fleeing soldiers, both desperate enough to try stealing food or arms from the more powerful players. That's a cool one. Kind of good and the bad and the ugly, right? Where they're kind of inserted, or they have to kind of go through Civil War areas that are still fighting the Civil War. I think famously they end up at that prison. Was it a Confederate-run prison? And then they also end up at that place where they're trying to, that bridge that no one wants to blow up. Or that's there, so they keep fighting over it, and I think their solution, right, is to finally just blow it up. Alright, I'm not going to read all these. Okay, we have an optional Part 5. Origins, circumstances, or surroundings specific to underworlds. I'm going to read a couple of these. So I guess some of these seem to be just specifically when you're going into dungeons that are associated with your scenario. Well, I guess there's a chance that there isn't one, but if there is one, loyalty of servitors and followers of players will be tested or changed by the experience. Alright, so your hirelings will come out a little bit different than they went in. Underworld has a portal that creates a terrible closeness to the terrible gods, right? So we're like Cthulhu's right there on the other side of that mirror. Areas around the underworld can be exceptionally difficult to cross or dangerous to enter. Traps in underworld have only the most horrific of penalties. Do not accidentally set them off. Don't do it. Alright. Optional Part 5, again, another one, opposition obstacles specific to the underworlds. I'm just going to read a couple. There's an extraordinary beast. There's a horrible beast. There's a destructor. Would that be, what's her name? God, Gozer the Gozerian, right? Gozer the Destructor. The Traveler has come. Underworld could be fantastic. There could be a secret society. There could be a great giant, a mirror beast, some reptiles, a regal beast, enveloping forms, a death cult. I'm always down with a death cult. Shapeless creature. So there's a lot going on. So these are some interesting oppositions or obstacles that you can stick into your underworld. And of course we get lots of them. Alright, so we're back to Part 6 now. Rivals, broaden, and flesh out. So I guess, I don't know what that means. It's a weird phrase, broaden and flesh. I guess they mean to take whatever skeleton of the rival we have and then add some more to it. That's just a strange way of saying it, but I'm sure a couple of these examples will guide our way. Person is opposite of expected gender. All right, that's a good one. Inverted person is extremely old or young for position. Person controls great magic, or it's only by reputation, really has no ability. Person is a relative of another, someone else. I guess we pick somebody else on here, and they're just a relative. If it's inverted, they're illegitimate, but still a blood relative. Person backs a pretender to a monarch's throne, or they themselves are a potential usurper. Person has numerous allies in a religious sect. So here we go. So these are some things that I guess ultimately they write. This is for fleshing out that rival. I don't know. I feel like they could have come with a different word, but I'm not going to really or phrase. But I'm not going to complain about now. This thing is multiple decades old at this point. We get what they mean. Point is, we're adding more detail to who this person or this creature, whomever, who this individual is that is, if not directly standing in our way, then opposing us on this particular mission. Part 6, the principal rival answers the question who. So this is it's kind of weird that they put the fleshing out stuff before the, I don't know, wouldn't you put the fleshing out part first, and then, the actual who first, and then the fleshing out afterwards? So you get stuff like royalty, a chancellor, a captain of the guards, a crusader, a son of a noble, a foreign or exotic ruler, a jester, artist, or sculptor, an alchemist, right? A who's who of personae. see. Okay, and then we get a whole bunch of those. There's a lot of different, basically occupations, right? What could this person, who could this person be? Now, answer to where. And then there's a note here about the major tarot apply as referee desires. Many times these picks are made to answer questions that arise during the course of other selections, in which case the major tarot apply per those categories. Okay, so we got a, is this where the rival is? Palace, private mansion, some place foreign or exotic, an isle on the coast, a sanctuary, the site of past battles. This might be actually where it's taking place and not where the rival comes from. I'm guessing. We kind of, I don't know. We started. We were following parts, and then the parts just kind of stopped for this. But we got a lot of different places, right? Treasury, an assembling hall, a caravan that's traveling, a castle or fortress, a private party, the court of a king, a public meeting hall, right? Storehouse, some woods. And then we have additional answers to the question why. So maybe these are, I think, actually, okay, I think this kind of reminds me of the Judges Guild stuff in the sense that sometimes they could have used a little bit more explanation, but so you kind of got to get your brain into the mind space that they're in. I wonder if you could actually use these for any of them. Like anything that kind of asks you, oh, here's this place, right? Where something is, you could use that. Or you need to answer why something is. You could then flip it and do that. So that's kind of cool. Maybe I could have used it to be explained a little better, assuming I'm getting it right. It's somewhat of a, not a huge assumption, but it is an assumption. I'm assuming that I'm getting it right. Oops. So we had why, right? It's just a bunch of different things, you know, emotional, fear, rage, insanity, gusto, guile, boredom. And then when, noon, midnight, twilight, at a burial, at a party, in a week, in a fortnight, in a year. Ooh, that would be a long one. And then how, sailing or marauding, stealing or purloining, battling or dueling. So we have all these questions. I'd like to actually see some examples. I wish I had some tarot cards handy so I could kind of go through it myself, but I don't. And I feel like I need to probably read this through again to get a better sense of the flow. I feel like sometimes, I think maybe it's because they do kind of, and it may just be the one issue with the tarot, right? It's because they think, oh, major arcana, then minor arcana. It makes them flip things around because they want to do the step with the major arcana first and then the step with the minor arcana. But really, it feels like in the actual flow of creating one of these things, I'd want to do the second part first, create the rival, and then flesh them out. Whereas here I have the fleshing out before the rival. A little bit weird. So, you know, I wouldn't mind taking something like this and kind of cutting it up or doing something to kind of put it in a better flow for me. And again, this is assuming I'm reading everything correctly. What is the closing comments. What is the referee's role? Mighty. So why mighty? Here are just a few features. Right. So, yeah, so we're going to detail the power of the DM. Or in this case, sorry, the referee, as they call it. I actually like referee better, but so few people use it. It's not used widely for anything, so I feel like for selfish purposes of, you know, trying to get people to actually put eyeballs on stuff, things like YouTube and whatnot, no one's looking for referee stuff in terms of role-playing games. They create the campaign, they set up the important facts, they keep track of all the hidden elements, they choose the settings, right? So all this stuff, okay, GMs are great, referees are great, we love them. I'm not sure why they feel that that's necessary to write that out, since who else is reading through this but the GMs, or the refs? I mean, maybe a player would want to read through this whole thing. I can't imagine anyone who reads it needs to be told all that stuff, but sure, why not? Okay, so again, some more kind of GM notes. These probably would have done better at the beginning, but let's just read through these in brief. Now that everyone... Okay, no, let's skip that part. Let's see. After players accept, list the following. Okay. So one, we have to list the mission and the deal. And I guess this will be either through just role play, or you could just say, like, here's the mission. We're going to list the mission's allies, not the player character's friends, but we list others in the campaign that could profit or desire the same result as the patron. In some cases, only the patron will be an ally. I'm assuming this is from the GM perspective or the referee perspective, so that it's not something that necessarily the players know, but maybe they do. But I assume that this is behind the screen stuff mostly. List the player's opposition, include any strengths or weaknesses. We have the rival, right? Describe the rival and his commitment to stopping the players. Let's see. List where the players must ultimately travel to complete their deed. Right? This is that end location where the climax will take place. Most missions will simply require the players to move from point A to point B, and then at B they do something. At times the players will start without knowing where their search will take them. In this case, referee still must know point B. Right. They may not know where the rod of 7 parts 1 through 7 are, but the ref should know. At least know before the players know. I would argue they don't really have to know much before the players know, but yes, at some point the ref needs to be ahead of the players in where stuff is. List any other important facts or time limitations the players face. Include such additional elements as the who, what, where, why, when, and how. Generate the climax. Have a basic idea of how the players might complete their mission. Yeah, I don't necessarily always do that. The reason being that I find that players are smart and clever and will often come up with stuff on their own. Not that, you start putting unwinnable Kobayashi Maru scenarios in front of everybody, but generally if you're not building it to be impossible, someone's going to come out with something. But yes, by the same token, it probably is good policy to at least know, well, this is one thing they could do. Sometimes I find the problem with that, if you're not careful, is that you create scenarios that have one solution and it's the solution that you're thinking of, and then it's up to the players to not really just find a way out organically, but find the way out that you're looking for, which is kind of why I like to not have that, because then I'm not consciously or unconsciously steering them towards, this is the thing I want you to do, go do that, which can happen. Doesn't always happen, doesn't have to happen, but it can happen. You can be careful and avoid it, but we all make mistakes. Goodness knows I have. Various other gaming pamphlets in Barony series. Well, I don't know why they don't put the in the Barony series in. All right, so yeah, when other pamphlets will continue the series and bring us more stuff. Okay, it looks like we have some more just general things. The Barony campaign system relies heavily upon the tarot deck. Okay. Does it give you an... it would be nice if they had an alternative. Like, hey, don't have a tarot deck, do this and that. Because not everyone has one. And particularly in this digital age, you might not be going into this thinking that you're going to buy one afterwards. Though there probably is some... I bet you there's a web tool for generating tarot cards. Alright, so they have... going over tarot a little bit, which I will... skip, and they have a little explanation, dice or cards, why use tarot or any deck. Well, I don't need to answer. They just made the choice. It's cool, it's flavorful. We get a mission setup worksheet. Ooh, and that is the end. All right. Well, Frederick, thanks so much for sharing this. I had never seen this before. It's really interesting. It's one of these things that clearly is someone's... It has an ISBN number. I was going to say someone's labor of love. It almost has that feel like the really old D&D stuff, right? Obviously done on kind of a shoestring budget, probably You know, it has kind of some quirkiness to it as far as the verbiage in places. Like, I'm not sure why they don't put a referee or the referee, but they say referee. Got some idiosyncrasies there, but that's all good, and then kind of it gives it a unique reading style. There's a lot to unpack there. I think there's a lot of things that I could see using in some way. I feel like for me personally, I don't know whether I would go get tarot to do this as much as I think tarot are cool. I will if I can find the tarot that I have, but I don't know if I would necessarily go out and buy tarot cards just for this purpose. Though with D&D and stuff, it's tarot. You can find a dozen uses in game for having tarot cards, so it's not like they would be wasted. You know, I think for myself, like the Judges Guild things, I will have to read through this again to just to give a better sense of the flow of how things work, and maybe go through an exercise. If I do go through a few and make a couple scenarios, I will stick them somewhere so people can see them, get an idea. The flow seems cool, but I feel like I need to go through it, see how those pieces work together. Again, sometimes it seems like you're doing things backwards, and I almost feel like, I think I said this a few minutes ago, if I could rearrange it slightly to make it more meaningful, or put it in a different format, it might help. But I feel like you could create a lot of really cool scenarios with this in fairly easy fashion. And probably once you get used to doing it, whether you do it, you create your own method from this, or just use this vanilla out of the box. There's a lot of different stuff, and it's definitely stuff you're going to have to take and marinate on. I don't know that I could do this right in the middle of a game. I think I need some time to go through the steps, write everything down, and then figure out in my campaign how this is going to work. Maybe if I got good at it, I could do it in a few minutes. You know, they're not giving you super detailed scenarios. They're giving you lots of these almost metaphoric building blocks. You know, just a general place. It's in a kingdom. It's with a in you know, this kind of general thing. This is this type of person. So anything you make with this, you generate, you're going to have to look at your own campaign and either create the NPCs or see what existing NPCs fit what you're looking for. Oh, it's a kingdom. Okay, well, they're in their kingdom, so it could be this. Okay, and the rival is someone from a kingdom far away. Okay, well, who might that be? Okay, and then it takes place in a storehouse, or, you know, or rather, maybe that's an easy one. Maybe it takes place on an island by the coast. Well, the kingdom is over here, so now I got to figure out if the kingdom's not on the coast. And granted, I could undo it or flip another card to get something else, but assuming I'm trying to make those results work, okay, how do they, okay, I see how that could work, and then so on and so forth. But definitely get some good adventure seeds out of it. I'm really excited to kind of try and see what I can get. So I'm really happy to have this as part of my collection. Frederick, thanks again for gifting it to me. He gifted some other books I think are either by the same, also by Better Games. I think maybe part of the same set. Maybe tell me a little more about this barony system, which seems kind of cool and interesting. So far on the reading, thumbs up. I would like to play with it more, but it definitely seems usable. Definitely a lot of inspiration. Inspiration is one of the biggest things I look for, and it is A+ in that regard. So that is Designing Fantasy Scenarios by Better Games. Link to it on drive-thrus in the show notes. I'm going to go check in with the wife and see what's going on with the debates. And other than that, I will talk to everyone later. Hey, and always, by the way, if you like this, give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. Boy, I'm coughing tonight. Got something in my throat. Yeah, if you can give me a like, I really appreciate it. If you aren't subscribed to the channel and you like these kind of videos, then subscribing would be great. And you can hit the little bell icon thing so you get notified. But otherwise, have a great rest of your morning, noon, night, whenever you're watching or listening to this. Game on, and I will talk to you later.